Okay, Ryan Carcass here again. I'm going to be doing the U.S. strategy on the Pacific side of the map, where you're fighting against Japan. I mean, yeah, it's a very fun side of the map. There's a lot of naval action. There's a great big ocean, lots of sea zones, all sorts of things that can be done. It's not 100% original setup. I still have some units down here I need to move back to Japan, but let's get that done right now. And while I'm doing that, you'll notice that the Hawaiian Islands there has a shipyard and a air base. So besides those two zones where the Navy already sits, the only other place your Navy may move before you're at war is here on this side of the map. That's it. Those three places with American ships, that's it. That's where you can move them. So rough go. It says you can reinforce the islands, but you're only allowed to move the Navy up to there. So I would assume that means you can move some transports around rather than naval ships. So maybe you can move this transport back home and load it up somehow. Or not. But the Philippines is pretty much a goner with all this red Japanese that are around here. If the Japanese really want the Philippines, it's so out of position. Sorry, let's move that Navy back where it belongs there. It's so out of position from the U.S. Like, look at how far away that is. Way over here is where the U.S. factories are. That's a long ways. You're looking at, even if you take over the Marshall Islands, which means you're at wartime income, so you don't start there, right? It'll take you 2 turns to get here and 2 turns to get back. So it's going to be a long shuck. Maybe build yourself some militia there. If you want, you could build a fort. It's possible for you to fly aircraft in here to reinforce it. You'd have to be skipping and jumping along Midway and Wake and Guam to get that done. And that's what you can do when you've got 35 income of your 63. So you can start building militia here, Midway, building militia at the Hawaiians, start building up units here and moving them across to Hawaii in anticipation of a big move. Just my only concern with building up too big of a Navy is you're too juicy of a target. And the reason for that is if everything's all clustered together, the Japanese have the ability to do that surprise strike. This is just too juicy. Eliminate the entire U.S. Navy all in one shot. These battleships take 4 turns to build. These cruisers take 3 turns to build. Right? There's no transports. There's no subs. There's nothing. There's no escorting of convoy lines. There's just kill it. So for that reason, maybe you want to kind of split your Navy up, because that surprise strike's only on one zone, right? So, you know, bounce it around, do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That's 3 different zones they would have to strike, and their surprise strike only applies to 1, right? So you're kind of spreading yourself out. Even if they nail you with everything here, you can still nail them back with that and whatever aircraft you may have built on the home country there. So there's some options there. Yeah, you don't want to get too carried away with giant stacking pile, because it just makes yourself too big of a target. Of course, Japan's often just going to try and leave you alone and leave you out of the war. And if that's the case, then take advantage of it, right? Like I was saying, you could build a factory here. There's a Navy base which connects to the supply of the home country, so you could build units on that factory. Just remember, factories are juicy targets. The Japanese might want a free factory, so that could have potentially increase their interest. Maybe build some coastal guns, a fort, a bunch of militia, something, right? Just make it harder to hit. That way the Japanese may skip over this and take juicier targets like Hanoi or Saigon or something. allow the U.S. to maintain more income and give them a possible forward base for when they get here to hit the Japanese harder. All right, and another thing, same idea as what I was describing with the on the other side there, on the Atlantic side. If the Japanese really, and I mean really want to, the Americans don't have a hope on this side. The Japanese could take their, I guess I don't have a Japanese roundel kicking around. Japanese could take their fleet. Japanese could take their fleet down here to the Marshalls, and I mean like everything, along with all their whatever. And from here, they can either go to the Hawaiian Islands, or they can go straight in here and hit that. Now, what they may do is they may take the Hawaiian Islands with their transports and battleships. So the battleships, maybe the carriers, all come up to here, right? And the transports land and dump a stack of dudes here in, I'm just going to use a small stack, this one dude here as an example. A giant stack of dudes there, right? And then they can take their fast movers, which could move 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, bypassing the only other place you can have a blocker, into here and attack your main fleet with cruisers and light carriers and light carriers, what else was I saying here? Destroyers and subs and everything, and just nail your fleet, annihilate it. And then they have this backup fleet back here with all the transports. They took Hawaii, they got this Navy base. They can start setting up a shuck going back and forth here, right? Things to watch out for. And if they do that really early in the game, just like on the other side with the Germans, they can take out San Francisco relatively easily. And notice that San Francisco is worth 6. It's got a major factory. I mean, the Japanese would turn it into a minor, right? Then, but from the same sea zone, they could attack southwestern U.S. for 3, western United States for 2. Maybe the next turn they move up here and they take the Pacific Northwest for 1, right? Well, even if you're building everything on the other side, if the Germans and the Japanese come at you from both sides, you can really get annihilated, and you could technically be surrendering. So build some ground units, just like I was saying on the other side. You got 1 light tank and 1 infantry on this side, and on the other side of the map you got 2 infantry. You need more ground units. I know you want to build that big navy and get them moving and all that other stuff, but ground units are the key. Now, if on the other hand, all the Japanese are doing is they're leaving the transports and these dudes behind, well, Navy without transports doesn't scare me as the U.S. if it's coming at me. It just means that my targets are getting closer. So if they got no transports and they come into the Hawaiian Islands, well, all that means is that everything moved close, so it's easier for me to kill the Japanese fleet. And it also opens up the back into Japan to the British from this side. Right? So keep conscious of what kind of fleet's coming at you. If it's got transports in it, build yourself 100%. Make sure you just, I don't care what you're doing next turn, build land units. Lots of land units. You need to keep yourself alive right here. Stay alive. You start losing that. You lose any one of these land zones, and you lost yourself a victory point for the whole game. So Japan is going to try, or Germany, to just land on any one of these once. So long as they've possessed it at one point in time through the whole game, you lost that victory point. That what is that one called here? The Monroe Doctrine one. The home country has never been in possession of an enemy player during the game at any time. That's one of your 6 victory conditions. So they can essentially neuter you from that victory condition by landing on either side of the map in any one of these. Bad juju. Alright, so that's that. Now, I'm going to move on to the build chart here for a second. Well, with the build chart, we got some different stuff going on here. Like, there's that one victory condition where you got more capital ships than the Japanese. And in the Japanese video, I had shown how the Japanese have to have an extra carrier and an extra battleship just to match what you have on both sides of the map at the start, right? But that includes the, give me a second here, the 2 battleships and a carrier that's on the Pacific side. Now those could get tied up, right? So keep an eye on what the Japanese are doing. Once they come into war with you, these 3 light carriers are going to be in play. They can place this one and they can start building these ones forward. So essentially that same turn they could place this one and build this one forward to place it as well. Right? So be cautious, be cognizant. It doesn't hurt to have yourself some backup destroyer or cruisers and light carriers maybe, or battleships, or I don't know why I'm struggling to find the word for carrier, but carriers and whatnot in here. That way you have an option to get, at least prevent the Japanese from getting that point by having double what you have, and then by attrition hopefully bringing yourself up to the level where you have more than they have, right? And get that point, which is twice as many. All right, so that's a couple of options here on what we can do as the U.S. to not get annihilated. Now, let's move on to what the U.S. can do to annihilate somebody else on this side of the map. So now let's get rid of that thing. We don't want it to be Japan anymore. I'll go grab this roundel I have from the original Pacific, I believe. It's hard to remember. Maybe it was from Guadalcanal. I had all these games for a while and I kind of mixed them all together. Anyway, at this phase of the game here, let's say this whole fleet here, you've moved up here. Now this is a little bit later on. You're actually on a footing where you can start attacking. Well, the key for the U.S. to get in and threaten down here, put some assistance to here, and I'm going to turn this whole camera over to the side here. Alright, so this is where the Hawaiian Islands is, this sea zone. Now if you take out the Marshalls here as the US, right, that's a very, very handy sea zone with the Navy base. You can move 1, 2, 3 down to here, or 4 with some of your fast movers, like anything that's not a capital ship or a transport, and you can assist the Australians if need be, or the Australians can reach you to here from either one of these 2 bases with their stuff, right? So they can come in here and reinforce you, and you can co-defend against the possible Japanese attack. And then, you know, just from here, you got 1, 2, 3, everything can reach the Philippines. Everything can reach Formosa, right? 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. You can get anywhere through half of the eastern half of the Dutch East Indies, Northern Australia, Philippines, Formosa. You can hit Okinawa, right? And yeah, from here, if you take out the Carolines now, the Carolines are a nice place. You know, stage up here. Now take the Carolines. Carolines, you got 1, 2, 3. Take out Iwo Jima. 1, 2, 3. You can land here and liberate Hong Kong, or you can hit the fleet that's in here. You can take out Formosa, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of your stuff. You just start your island hopping, right? Annihilate any of these places, because the Okinawa, it's like, oh, it's worth nothing, right? True, Okinawa's worth nothing, but if the American fleet is sitting over here in Palau or Guam, these are at an air base. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and it can't reach home, but it can land on Okinawa, right? Combine that with a bunch of cheap subs and destroyers and a lot of planes, you could lose your entire fleet. So be cognizant of these islands. The Japanese will use these islands as ways to get their aircraft in range to attack your fleet. Same thing with Palau here, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 to land on Palau. I hope I'm saying that right. And there's, combine that with a bunch of subs that are coming here, 1, 2, 3, right? Everything can get to you, and that could be very, very bad for the Americans. So the islands may not be important as individual islands. They may not have a face value. A lot of these islands are going to give the Japanese a bonus and bonus income, the ones that they take over anyway, even though they had a face value of 0. So be cognizant. You got to watch the Japanese. Now the best thing that you can happen to you as the American player is the Japanese get all excited and they go gung-ho on over here. Well, that's a long ways away. So you can start moving your fleet into here. Now, both of you have the potential to meet at the Philippines. From here, right? 3. For you, 3. Or you can decide to come in here, 1, 2, and take Formosa out instead, right? Same distance. So they're not going to know, they're going to come back, but they're going to try to block you, and also it's going to be a mess, a real mess. But you can put a lot of pressure on the Japanese, and if you keep them moving and you keep them spending money on fleet, then the Japanese aren't spending money on land units, and they're not taking over land zones, and that's where these guys come in. These guys are the ones that should be taking over all these land zones with the pressure of the Japanese building land units off of them so that they can outproduce Japan on the land, right? And the Americans just get in there and get in the way. Right, that's the best case scenario. All right, so there's a couple of options. I've also included how you can lose on this side, right? Like Alaska's a pain. Alaska's annoying. Japan can hit Alaska anytime it wants. From this Krill Islands with the transport, it's 1, 2, right? 3, or 1, 2, 3. Like they can get in there, or they can get up to this place up here, right? Or here, the Aleutians are, and that's not going to lose your victory point. That's not going to. All the land up there is worth $1 if they take all 4 land zones. So it's not a big deal. This is the only one that's worth any money. And if they take that, you just build some land units and you just start marching through the British stuff. And they're annihilated, because if they're focused solely up there, they're just, yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful for you. You just divided and conquered the Japanese by their own design. They will probably go up there in a harassing tactic, trying to get you to spend money up there and spend time up there as a delaying action. So be aware of that. Don't spend too many resources up there. The big target, blockade Japan. Just get it blockaded. Wipe out their navy, blockade them. All this stuff, they can't make any money off of it. They can own everything, but they don't earn anything. You got them blockaded. Maintain the blockade. Just keep sending enough ships here that the Japanese can never break out. And everybody has a heyday eating up all the Japanese stuff. Even if they took over all of China and India, you'll still be able to get it all back. All right, so that's that. Hopefully that covers a lot of the possible bonus options. And I'm going to leave you there. That's the Pacific strategy on this side. And I'll do another quick video here where you combine the two and show you the possible ways to balance your gameplay so you don't over project your hand to one side or the other. All right, and I'm going to leave you there. Have a good day and enjoy yourselves. Bye.